call the meeting to order. Good evening, Exeter. Welcome to the October 26th Exeter Select Board meeting. Good evening to the board members, respective town staff, panelists, those watching as attendees, and those of you watching at home. As chair of the Exeter Select Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. On October 23rd, 2020, public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access the meeting online and via phone. We remind the public that the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. Please note that all votes taken tonight will be done so via roll call, and I'll start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of the board. When I introduce each member, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting and who that person is, which is required under the right to know law. Good evening, Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Good evening. I'm here in my home alone in this room.
Thank you. Selectman Brown, good evening.
Good evening. I'm alone in my business.
Great, thank you. Our clerk, Selectwoman Gilman.
I am at home and I am alone.
Thank you. The Vice Chair, Selectwoman Molly Cowan.
Good evening, everybody. I am here and alone.
And I'm Nico Papakostandis, and I am here alone in the room. We also have our town manager, Mr. Dean.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. And our recording secretary, Joanna Bartel.
Hi, I'm here and my husband and daughter are downstairs, but.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, we've got a big agenda tonight, so we'll jump right in. We'll start, we do not have any board interviews, but I would remind the public that the select board a few meetings ago did establish an arts and culture committee, and we would love to start accepting applications and setting up interviews. So for all of those interested, please contact the town manager's office with your application. I'll open it up to public comment at this time. It's an opportunity for the public to comment to the board. We do ask, though, that if any of your comments are pertaining to any of the agenda items, you wait until that agenda item comes up. But at this point, I'll open it up to public comment. I will pause for a moment to see if any hands are up. Okay. Seeing none, we do not have any proclamations or recognitions. We can jump into the approval of our minutes from the October 19th, 2020 meeting. If there are no revisions or amendments, I would accept a motion to approve the Exeter Select Board regular meeting minutes of October 19th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Aye.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
And the clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next, after a few months of interviewing 16 or so applicants for the Exeter Police Stakeholders Committee, we've concluded all of our interviews. And tonight, if the board is inclined, we can deliberate on the various interviews that we conducted and also accept motions to nominate and appoint individuals to this committee. I note that when we first established the committee, we talked about 7 to 9 people. So I think, first of all, as a board, maybe we can have a discussion as to the number of people that we'd like to fill the committee.
Can we just get one more time applicants to spaces available? A ratio.
We had, by my count, I think we had 16 or 17 applicants. And when we first established the draft of the charge of the committee, we indicated, I went back into the minutes, we had said either 7 or 9, but we never really clarified that. So I'm asking the board, are we most comfortable with 7? Are we comfortable with 9? Another number?
16 were interviewed, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, At first, I thought 9 was a fine number because that's usually a rather manageable committee size.
Mhm.
But with 16 interested people, I came down to 10 or 11 that I thought would best fit the mission of this committee. So I would accept enlarging it to 11. I wouldn't go past that, I don't think.
And I'd be open to going the opposite direction just because it's Zoom, so it might not have as easy dynamics as as a normal face-to-face meeting. So I'd be in favor of a 7.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf?
I'm also in favor of less is more. I just think that more than 7 becomes hard to manage. I just know myself on separate committees that I sit on, just getting 4 people to all show up at the same time can be problematic. So it's not a matter of qualified applicants as much as realistic, availability for that many folks.
And that's a good point. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yeah, I think when I was first talking about forming this committee with the chief, we wanted to have an opportunity to have a really diverse perspective. And I worry about if we limit it to 7 people, whose voices are we cutting out? I do, however, agree that, sort of the larger committee, the harder it gets, right? Like the more cooks in the pot, the harder it can be. So I think, I don't necessarily have a huge preference either way we go, but I want to also make it very clear that if we're not appointing people to the committee, it doesn't mean that their perspective isn't wanted or their participation won't be included. So I want, I'd be open to hearing the board, how the board would want to manage that and manage making sure that, we're hearing from the academy perspective, we're hearing from parents, we're hearing from, the different sort of socioeconomic voices that Selectman Brown has been talking about. So that's my concern with limiting it to a smaller number. However, the vision, I think, is to have presentations from people who are interested parties who might not necessarily have the time to commit to a bi-monthly or whatever it ends up being set up as. So, that's where I come at it, throwing my perspective out there. I'd be interested to hear from the chief if he's available and wishes to share his feelings. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
And I think all points are valid. I tend to agree with Selectman Brown and Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf that, if you're going to be meeting that regularly, even if it's once a month, particularly over Zoom, that maybe less could be more. But what if we went with 7 regular members and maybe 4 alternates as we do on some of the other advisory committees? Is that an option the board would consider?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Selectwoman Cowan, you're the other select board rep to the committee. How do you feel about that?
I mean, like I said, I feel fine about it because I want to make sure that we're making it a place where everybody's being heard. And however we do that is fine. Like, I don't think that the people we appoint to sit on this committee are the only people that we're going to be hearing from.
Correct.
And I saw Chief Poulin come on video and off video. So I would like to let him speak to if he has anything to say.
Chief, would you like to offer some thoughts?
Yes, I would agree with the recommendation of having 7 and then 4 alternates.
Okay. Mr. Dean, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to pitch in and say, because I always represent sort of the administrative side of things, and we know with some committees, actually to Selectman Brown's point, the Zoom meetings with a larger committee may be a little bit more manageable. I know, like with budget committee, when we have 13 to 15 people on a committee and you're dealing with paper and binders and things like that, it gets really unwieldy from an administrative perspective, and it's a lot of work and a lot of inefficiency. So I think I'm coming back around to, from the staff perspective, I think a smaller number would be better. It's the board's prerogative, of course, how you want to handle it. But I always like to at least throw that administrative piece out there, because we know it's our people that are going to be managing the committee and organizing it and scheduling meetings and getting minutes out and chasing minutes down and doing all the things that are really needed to be done to support a committee. So just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman, are you comfortable with 7 voting members and 4 alternates?
Yes, I would be fine with that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Please.
Because we have sort of a broad idea of what we want this committee to do, but then how do we decide about who's a voting member? Like, are we going to leave that to the committee when they meet? Are we going to appoint the voting members? What is everybody's idea here?
I would assume that we appoint the voting members and our alternates. I mean, unless when they all meet and the reality is that somebody who wants to be a voting member just doesn't have the time or can never meet during that time block, then they can switch to becoming an alternate and someone else can move up. But I think the more declarative we can be about who's what, the better it would be for at least the beginning part.
And that would be consistent with how the board handles other committees. Presumably there'd be a chair and a vice chair of the committee who would appoint, which alternates would be voting members if a voting member were absent. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I had the same, or agree with you and Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf about we've always appointed both voting committee members and alternates, and as Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf said, people may find that it's too cumbersome or too time-consuming and would wish to step down. An alternate is supposed to take the place of a voting member when that voting member is not available, but an alternate or a voting member might find that they just can't manage the time, or that, too many conflicts or something like that. So they can recommend, usually what happens is when somebody's an alternate at the meeting, the chair decides, or by consensus, the board decides who's a voting member that night or that day. And we can do that or it can work that way until somebody decides they just don't want to be a regular member altogether. And then we give the approval to change positions.
The more that we talk about this, the less comfortable I am actually having alternates, because it's not clear to me what exactly they're going to be voting on. Like, I agree, for the planning board, this makes sense because it's a legally binding, quasi-judicial body. But I don't know that what we're asking the Exeter Police Commission, this collaborative with citizens and police, like, I don't know what we're asking them to vote on. So
that's
yeah,
great.
I'm struggling with that.
No, and that's a great point. Presumably there won't be that many votes. So if there were, let's say went with 7 voting members and 4 alternates, if the purpose of the committee is more discussion, then the 4 alternates would still, have a place at the table.
And then we just have a tiered level of participation, which doesn't feel great.
Selectman Brown, you're the other select board rep to the committee. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we're clear that this should have a very finite term and a scope of work. I think it should begin with a survey that ends in a strategic plan in some very finite time frame, because there are statutes, RSAs about commissions, and I know this is a committee different from a commission, but if it's very specific about setting up town level police commissions where we would need to have a legislative vote from the town as a whole. So since this thing will be a committee, I think it's important to be clear about here's what this should be doing. It will be, conducting a survey and producing some product, which will be a strategic plan. And as well as we paid for a study that outlined an advisory committee to the police chief, I believe. So I'm not sure where this weighs in against that, but I am, the RSAs are clear as far as coming up alongside a long-standing commission. So I would say, let's think about this in terms of a seven-person board that, with or without alternates, but that has a clear scope, 6 to 9 months of producing, conducting survey, handing off strategic plan. But that's where I stand.
No, and you're correct to differentiate between a commission and a committee because the RSAs are very specific for a commission. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I have been going back and forth with this as I hear the different arguments. Selectman Brown's point is well made that we should be finding a product out of this committee. And if that's so, if we want a product, we need the people to agree to it. And in that instance, then we do need voting members and alternate members. So I think it's something that we can work out. If we set this group with voting members and alternate members, and they meet together and decide they want to work towards something that may get to a ballot, then the process works the way it is. There are voting members and alternate members. If they decide they just want to be advisory, then we probably need to change the mission statement and take the recommendation of how it is they want to be acting as volunteers from the town on this committee.
Thank you. Chief Poulin and then Mr. Dean.
Right. So I'm not sure myself what exactly they would be voting on as well. I see the alternates as perhaps if someone has to drop out for some reason or not, they could be called in. And, we're also going to have internal stakeholders on this as well. So we got to be mindful of those numbers too.
Thank you. Mr. Dean?
So just a couple of quick points. One is that the only boards in the town that have alternates are land use boards, and those alternate positions are set up via the RSAs. So that sort of partners with Selectman Brown's point. The other thing is the form of government of Exeter under the town manager RSA puts control of the police department under the town manager subject to the direction of the select board. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew there's a distinction. A police commission is a very, very different animal. As far as authority goes and what they do. And typically you'd only have a police commission if you had a charter, which Exeter does not have a charter. So just a few points on that. The other thing I just wanted to put up real quick for people to refresh themselves with, if I could, hopefully that's not too much of a shock, is the charge that has been laid out by the chief with respect to this committee. So you can see exactly here what the chief had in mind. And I don't know if the chief wants to speak to it again or not, but you can see that maybe people can take a second to read it and see if it makes anything different in their minds about, what they're thinking about this. So I think these are some of the keys right here that were looked at by the chief early on. And obviously one of the main roles of this committee, it's been set up to work with the chief and the department on a strategic plan for the department, which I think is very, very exciting. It does call for a diverse group of 7 to 9 people. And it does focus on the CPSM report that we just got in June of 2020. So, and this is what it talks about in terms of the composition of the committee: business leaders, elected and non-elected members of town government, educators, clergy, community advocates, realtors, and residents, et cetera, as some sample members that were envisioned to be part of this group. So, and I can stop that and I can bring it back up if you'd like to see it again.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Dean. So first of all, I think there is some, at least I'm thinking of the Rec Advisory Committee has alternates. I believe there's 7 and 4, if I'm not mistaken, but I know they have alternates. So
you're right. There are 2 on that board. That is true.
So that would not be breaking precedent. But if the board wanted to avoid alternates, we had, I thought 7 and 4 might be reasonable, but if we didn't want to get alternates or get involved with alternates and who does what or whatnot with the board, how would the board feel about 9 voting members as a compromise between 7 and 11?
Yeah, I mean, I think the alternates, based on, they can still participate, they just don't vote. And so if we're talking about 11, I would be comfortable with 9. I totally get the thinking around, too many cooks in the fire and wanting to having a productive and participatory group. I also think that the interest from the town indicates that people want to serve on this, which is exciting. But I am still not set on any number.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's up for discussion. I do think 11 voting members is too many. I agree with Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf and Selectman Brown on that. Selectman Brown, I'll ask you, since you're the other select board rep to the committee, how would you feel about 9 regular members and no alternates?
9 works, yep.
Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf?
That works.
And Selectwoman Gilman?
Yeah, I think that's where I was going, so yes.
So 9 regular members, no alternates. Okay. So next we have 16, all very qualified applicants, all bringing something, to the table with respect to this initiative. And hopefully, as Selectwoman Cowan said, and the others, that, even if you're not appointed to the committee, that you still express some interest and maybe contribute in some other way, because I do think that all 16 members, could contribute something. So we need to appoint 9. Mr. Dean, I've never been in a situation where we've just appointed everybody on the same evening when you've got 9 selections out of 16. So I would ask the board to consider. I've tried to think of a couple of different ways this weekend, and certainly, this isn't the best way, but it's what I came up with. And if anybody on the board has a better idea, I'm all ears. But I thought if we could go down the list, start with the applicants on whom we all agreed unanimously, and then work back from there and kind of do the numbers way. But if there's a better idea, I'd love to hear it. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf?
I just have my column of absolute yeses, and then I have my column of maybe. So if we want to just go down, and I think this is basically what you're saying, is read off the names, do a tally, and then just go that way. And then if our numbers are off, then go back and review and decide, okay, let's discuss a particular candidate.
That's exactly it. If we each go through the ones when we went through the list, here are the people that I absolutely want. And then if we all agree, we can appoint and then move from there with the numbers.
All right, let's do it.
Selectwoman Gilman, you have your hand up?
Yes, this is similar to when we reorganized the select board, where anybody that wants to put in a nomination for a position can be done. So we could have 1, 2, or 3. and then the whole board votes on the appointment. So this would be a similar kind of thing where we put out a name.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Wandering hands, then the number, and then we, everybody puts in their vote, yay or nay, and gets accepted that way. Does that make sense?
So just to follow up, are you suggesting that somebody make a nomination and then the rest of us indicate whether or not they were on our list? Or
basically it's that if I don't know, I think we should start the list from the top, who we interviewed first. And then we make our case for why.
So you're suggesting going down?
Sorry,
I was back more with Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, where, like, let's say, for example, if I had 5 individuals that I absolutely wanted, that I would list those 5. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf would do the same, Selectman Brown, and then if we all unanimously, did I understand you, Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, that's...
Yeah, so mine is just a modified version of that. So literally we would go, Timothy, Kerber, how many people had Timothy down? Tally.
Yeah.
Elliot, tally. And then when we get down to it, we can eliminate those who didn't get enough votes to make it to a discussion point. I just don't think it's worth having a discussion if only one person voted for them.
Understood.
As harsh as that may sound.
I would also rather have affirming votes rather than votes against somebody. Like that would...
Yes, I'm not voting against. I'm just saying this is who I want.
That sounds good.
And the board's comfortable just going down. We have on page 12 of our packet, we have the spreadsheet, which are all the applicants in the order that we interviewed. So is the board comfortable with just starting from the top and going down? So for example, the first name will be called, and then we each indicate whether or not we have them on the list. Is that how the board wants to do this?
Should we indicate by raising our hands in the chat?
Basically, all the things
to figure out how to do
it. Is that what we're trying to do?
I mean, it'll eventually become clear, right? But
it'll become public record soon enough, but not in the moment.
But I don't know.
No, that's actually,
I think, very creative.
That is creative. And you know what? I admit I'm not a tech. Can somebody tell me how to raise my hand so that we're not holding up the meeting anymore?
There's, so if you go over to the participants, underneath there's a little thing that says raise hand.
Like I have mine raised.
It's next to invite, mute me, and then the third one is raise hand.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think that's an appropriate way to go. And maybe once we've developed this slate, we vote in the slate.
Who's keeping track?
I will tally.
Okay. I'm like, I have Sam's whiteboard. I can do it right here.
I've got my little Excel spreadsheet ready to go. Let's rock and roll.
And we can confirm the whole way through. So
yes.
if as Lovey reads her tallies, we can say yep or no.
All right, perfect.
Ready.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
9. Got it.
See, I taught myself how to raise my hand and I muted myself. Some people would like that. But
there's one thing that I want to discuss before we get into the voting, and that is the do we want to have a vote on Mr. Mendes, who is not from Exeter? And how do we want to handle that?
Selectwoman, I have a thought, but Selectwoman Gilman, you have your hand up?
Yes, I thought about that in my considerations and going through the list and how this committee is going to interact with our department and maybe their experience. Well, I have to say, I wanted residents to have priority. new volunteers, people with children who are, going to be the examples for them. Experience maybe with other police departments, experience with interacting with our police department. So I would be inclined to limit us to Exeter residents.
I too agree with you, Selectwoman Gilman. I gave that some thought. And we also discussed that with Mr. Mendez when we interviewed him. And he seemed open to, understanding that and offering to, participate as a non-member. And he seemed comfortable going back to my notes. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yeah, I was going to say ask the same thing, because I think that he intersects really well with this work in a variety of capacities in his work with the racial unity team, and hopefully they can be an integral part of our discussion, even if Ken is not sitting on the board and maybe somebody else is sitting on the board who is on the board of the racial unity team. So that would be my thought, to ask him to participate in another way.
Okay. I'd like to open that up. Selectman Brown and or Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf, do you have any thoughts?
I agree.
Let the vote bear. So residents should have priority, but I think the vote will bear that out.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, God, I'm sorry.
I would move that we don't even vote on. If we can pull him in another way, then at least it's between the 15 people for the 9 slots instead of the 16 people for the 9 slots.
How does the board feel about that?
Fine with me.
Okay.
On board.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before I start going down the list? Okay, the first interviewee on August 24th was Timothy Kerber.
How long do you want to leave the polling open, Mr. Chair?
I was going to ask Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf to let me know when she's...
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We can move on.
Okay.
Okay.
Also on August 24th, I'm sorry?
I'm just letting people know they should put their hand down before we get to the next one.
Thank you. Yep.
Hold on.
Julie, is that for 1 or 2?
That's for Kerber, the first one.
Okay, thank you. Now we are done and ready for number 2.
Thank you. The second person on August 24th was Elliot Berkowitz.
I'll wait another second. Okay. I think we've got everything.
On August 31st, we interviewed David Allen.
Excuse me, I want to raise my hand, but he is my neighbor, so I have a little more self-interest in this than the rest of you.
That means you know him well. I would hope that...
This is true, but I do have more interest in it than the rest of you, so that's one of the considerations for, conflict of interest, so.
It's a small town.
Well,
So you're not raising your hand then?
if the board has no objection, then I am going to have.
I don't object. I think you're a good screening then.
Mm-hmm.
Then there it is.
All right. I've got my count. Oh, I have my count.
Okay. I'll wait for the hands to clear. Also on August 31st, we interviewed Timothy Graham.
Okay, thank you. We're ready for the next.
On On September 14th, we interviewed Matthew Carbone.
Okay.
Wait. I'm looking at two different things, so I have to see, because we changed the number. We're going for 9, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then there you are.
Okay, thank you.
And also on September 14th, we interviewed Ann Sermon.
Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Also on September 14th, we interviewed Katie Adams.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Also on September 14th, we interviewed Andrew Rocco.
Okay.
On September 28th, we interviewed Lionel Ingram.
All right.
On September 28th and also on October 5th, we interviewed Harry King.
Was that Bob? Okay, great. Next.
On October 5th, we interviewed Emily Heath.
Okay, thank you.
On October 5th, we interviewed Ann Griffin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on October 5th, we interviewed Alexis Simpson.
Thank you.
And on October 5th, we interviewed Darius Thompson.
Thank you.
And our final interview was October 19th. We interviewed Tanisha Johnson.
All right, we're all set.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes. Okay, give me 2 seconds and then I will get you our numbers. Talk Halloween costumes or something.
I was going to ask Mr. Dean or Selectwoman Gilman, as a matter of procedure, will we need to appoint each individually, or can we appoint the 9 as a committee?
Yeah, so I know Lovey wasn't raising her hand because I think she was.
I wrote my, I already had my
taking votes, so she's sort of adding her vote onto the rest of your votes.
Yes.
So far, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with 4 votes, and that's Katie Adams.
Oh, wait, because Selectwoman, she's tallying them up.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so right now, I will tell you our top 8, and then there are a few, the rest are 2 vote ties.
Selectwoman Rountree, would you pause one moment, because I think Selectwoman Gilman had a question?
Yes.
Excuse me, I just wanted to be reminded, these have no terms. We're not doing staggered terms for these, so it'd be one body. We would approve one body as a slate.
Yes, because I think to Selectman Brown's point, we don't know for how long this committee will. I mean, there should be a finite time. There's a project, and so I agree with him on that. All right, Selectwoman Rountree-Olaf.
Okay, so I'll read the names and the number of votes. Is that fair enough for everyone?
That works for me.
Or do you want to just know the top 8 and then we'll go into the ones that we've tied for 2 votes? We'll keep it clean. Let's keep it clean, and I'll just go through the top 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so our top 8 are Elliot Berkowitz, Matthew Carbone, Katie Adams, Harry King, Emily Heath, Alexis Simpson, Darius Thompson, Tanisha Johnson, and then when ready, I will list those who have the same number of 2 votes.
So we have 8 that had, these were the top 8?
Yes, those were the top 8. So those are,
okay.
And then we can discuss the remaining 1, 2, 3. So we have 4 candidates who have the same number of votes.
Okay.
All right.
Lovely. Just to confirm,
yes.
Berkowitz and Carbone had 3 votes then, right? Correct total?
Berkowitz had 3 and Carbone had 3, yes.
So you voted for both of them, okay.
Yeah, thank you for calling me out.
That's why I was having Selectwoman Roundtree, because she had all the votes there.
Right, so I have mine. All right, so for the next...
Excuse me, before you go forward, can you read that list again? Because I don't write as fast as you are.
No, absolutely. So top 8, Elliot Berkowitz,
Okay.
Matthew Carbone, Katie Adams,
Yeah.
Harry King.
Okay, that's the one I missed. Okay.
And then Emily Heath,
Yep.
Alexis Simpson, Darius Thompson,
Okay.
and Tanisha Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and let me know when you're ready, and I'll let you know the ones we need to discuss.
We're ready.
All right, so Timothy Kerber, David Allen, Ann Sermon, and Lionel Ingram.
Okay. Now, you don't have to tell me the number, but did they have the same number of votes?
Yes,
they did.
They all had the same exact number of votes.
Okay. I would open it up for nominations or discussion on these 4. Selectman Brown?
Yeah, I'll speak in favor of Timothy Kerber, just in terms of he's a business owner and he's a technology person, so he would be really suited to offer input and feedback, perspectives on technology, which is based on that study's findings. The tech aspect of the department is sorely lacking. So,
Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I would agree with that. And also one of the considerations there was children in the different schools. I think he has a high school student and one at the CMS. And I think it would be a good connection to get some feedback through him from the schools.
Thank you. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf, did you have any thoughts?
No thoughts.
Okay.
Just listening.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Boy, I don't know. I am super excited about the folks that we've appointed already. I think it's going to be a really great committee. I'm torn. I mean, I think so many people could make excellent members of the committee, and I hope that they will offer their perspective even if they're not formally on the committee. So I'll just, defer to other folks. Yeah.
Okay. Selectman Brown, was that a nomination?
it was.
Okay. Selectman Brown has made a nomination for Timothy Kerber. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, we don't need a second. We're still doing the same kind of voting roster, I believe.
You
Okay.
you did that and got ties, though. You're working to break ties. So
Right.
maybe a way to do it is you could discuss any other names you want to bring up.
Right. Should we wait until all the ties are discussed and then
Yeah, we can certainly entertain other nominations.
If one candidate gets a majority of the board's votes, you could consider that person appointed if you want to go through a process like that.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other nominations of the three remaining in that list that Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf gave us?
I think somebody like Lionel Ingram would be an incredible asset to the committee. He's been in town for a number of years, and he sort of straddles the EA, the town gown thing we've got going on. But I also think that we have, part of our mission was to engage the business community. Daryl, can you remind me what Mr. Kerber does? What his business is? Oh,
he's head of a tech company. I forget the name of it, but it's he's really the CEO of a tech company. I just know him through another resident, and we've had some tech conversations in the past.
Got it. But it's not like a brick and mortar business in town.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
If it was, it might be remote now.
Sure, right. Like everybody. I mean, the other person then to consider is Timothy Graham, who owns the repair shop that I like and go to.
He's not on our list.
Oh, right. Okay.
Sorry.
So we're discussing right now, just to refresh, we have Timothy Kerber, David Allen, Ann Sermon, and Lionel Ingram, who all had the same number of votes. And that's who we're discussing.
Mr. Chair, there's Mr. Kerber's application.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. So he is also former police. So one of the things, one of the things that I know that that our chief has shared is we're going to have the police perspective from our current police members. But yeah, he has a number of other things, including children in the schools. He's a business owner.
Okay. Has everybody read Mr. Kerber's application? Okay, Mr. Dean, can we go back to the...
Levy, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What is the breakdown of men on women on this commission?
Okay, so Elliot, Matthew, Harry, Darius, and then
split. No.
Katie, yes. Emily, Alexis, Tanisha. We're at exactly 4-4.
I know. Then should we nominate Ann Sermon because Harry would be proud of us? It's hard to know.
Ann's definitely another qualified candidate to consider.
Yeah.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Yes, I want to make a pitch for my neighbor, David Allen. I know he has had interactions that he can speak to in this group, and I'm not saying they're negative or anything, but just as a circumstance of where we live and what our association with the hospital, which does involve the questions about taking the burden off the police of welfare aspects of what they're doing right now, and the hospital plays part of that, maybe. And so I think that he would add a voice that has some different police experience, but also looking at how we can relieve our police from issues that are not necessarily criminal or service related for the police department.
Okay. So we have 4 names, and I think in one way or another they've all been nominated. So an idea would be to go back to what we did before Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf. If you wouldn't mind again, perhaps we could raise our hands. She could tally them up, and maybe we could get somewhere that way.
Okay, sounds good.
Does the board object to that? Okay. You tell me when you're ready, Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Okay, just need 2 seconds. So
Sure.
Timothy, David, Ann, and Lionel. Is that correct?
Yes, Kerber, Allen, Sermon, and Ingram.
Okay, let's rock and roll.
Okay, we'll start with Timothy Kerber.
Mr. Chair, just to remind me, because my order is not necessarily the same as everyone else's, we're looking to fill 9 slots now, right?
Yeah, so this is for one position that we're
going to name 4 names for one position, correct?
Thank you.
Yeah, so you vote once, right? Since there's 1 slot.
Or if you vote on each candidate, it would
No,
be
if you vote
whoever
for
gets
each
the most
candidate,
votes.
then we tally up whoever got the most votes of the 4.
Okay.
You can do it either way. It's up to you, but those are the 2 ways to do it.
It's like
So
ranked choice voting or not ranked choice voting. Okay, I'm ready.
all right. Whenever you guys are ready, we've got.
Did everybody have an opportunity to weigh in with Timothy Kerber? Okay. Next, Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf, we have David Allen.
Okay.
All set? Ann Sermon.
Okay.
And finally, Lionel Ingram.
Okay. We're good.
Okay, thank you.
We have our 9th member, Ann Sermon.
Okay.
She received, yeah. And for the minutes, I can get this to both, Julie, I can get you this in a more organized fashion, and Russ as well.
Thank you.
Do we want to read the committee just one more time, the full committee?
Yep. Okay, so from my notes from voting, we have Elliot Berkowitz, Matthew Carbone, Katie Adams, Ann Sermon, Katie Adams, Harry King, Emily Heath, Alexis Simpson, Darius Thompson, and Tanisha Johnson.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to appoint those 9 individuals to the Exeter Police Stakeholders Committee.
With a term of 1 term?
With a term of 1 term, correct.
1 year? Okay.
Do we want to specify how long that term is?
I think it should be until April 2021, like all of the committees. And then if we need to re-up it, we can have that discussion.
That remains consistent. I like that idea. Any opposition from the board?
I'll so move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectman Brown,
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan,
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
Aye.
The clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to our 9 committee members, and a deep, sincere thank you and appreciation to the other applicants. And hopefully we see you contributing to the committee and anybody else in town. And I'm excited to get this going. So Selectwoman Cowan and Selectman Brown and Chief Poulin we'll be looking forward to your updates. Okay, with that, Mr. Scafidi, you've been sitting tight along with Vicky Novojcik, and we're looking forward to the election updates.
Well, that brought me back to the old days. Thanks for everybody being here tonight. We're going to go over a few things rather quickly. Start with tomorrow. Tomorrow around 2 o'clock, Andy Kohler and I will be running a test on the voting machines. It is open to the public if you want to come to the town clerk's office. We will be running the ballots, test ballots through the machines to make sure they work properly. Tomorrow night, let me see, Tuesday night, no. Wednesday, we have ballot clerk training at the town hall, right, Vic? About 5 or 6? 6?
It's at 6:30.
6:30, okay. Tomorrow night is the last night you can register to vote. The town clerk's office will be open from till 7 o'clock. If you want to register to vote after that, you can only do it through absentee voting.
Correction there, Paul. Yeah. We're in session. The supervisors are in session that evening from 7 to 7:30, or as long as the public needs us to be there. And we'll be finalizing all the voters tomorrow. Okay. Yep, yeah. Tomorrow night. Yep.
Tomorrow is the last night to register to vote.
Register to vote, yep. Prior to the election, and then election day we'll be taking voters. However, if you're planning on voting absentee and are not a registered voter, you can still go into the town clerk's office, fill out all the paperwork. However, that paperwork gets held until election day morning and will be processed as such.
Right.
Per state law.
Yep. After tomorrow night, that checklist is the checklist we use at voting, correct, Vic? Okay.
That is correct.
On Friday afternoon, the town clerk's office closes at 12:30. However, the town clerk will be in her office taking absentee ballots from 3 to 5. I don't know if Vicky's going to be there. So people can drop their ballots off from 3 to 5 on Friday afternoon. Friday morning, we will be pre-processing absentee ballots over at the town hall versus the town offices. We will have 4 groups set up to go through the absentee ballots to pre-process them. We're not checking them in other than we're checking a name off that we received their ballot. We don't open the affidavit ballot until the day of the election. People are welcome to come and view it. They can view it without getting into any detail about questioning anything. Challengers can also view it if they have the proper paperwork from the state party to let me know who they are. There will be from 8 o'clock in the morning until whenever we finish. We don't know how long it's going to take, but as of today, when I left the town clerk's office, they had sent out 4,723 absentee requests. We have received back 3,922. The people that have been working, the volunteers in the town clerk's office, have been working every day to try to get all of these ready and for us to open up on Friday. So we appreciate the hard work they've put through. Wednesday night, we are having training, as we just talked about earlier, at 6:30 for all the ballot clerks. On Thursday night, we are going to have a session with the volunteers that aren't going to be ballot clerks. We get other jobs for them to do. So they'll be meeting in with us Thursday. Friday, like I said, we're processing absentee ballots. On voting on Monday, we will be setting up the voting area like we had in the primary. It's going to be identical to it. We're going to do a little shifting. We may add a couple of tables with the anticipation of a pretty brisk day. Hopefully that happens. Right now, we're anticipating, a good 5,000 to 6,000 people showing up to vote live as of now. It could change. You never know what the decision make, what the weather does, and so forth. And then Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., we start voting. The people can come. They want to hold signs outside the atrium. I'm going to extend if you're looking out the door towards the parking lot on the right-hand side, I'm going to extend that area all the way down to the end of the building. I don't know how many people are going to show up that want to hold signs, but with social distancing, we're going to need the extra space if people show up. So that's my anticipation, is to make sure we do have enough space. You must wear a mask. You must do as best you can for social distancing. If you don't want to wear a mask and you want to hold a sign, there is a chain link fence where the old outfield and football stadium is. Will allow you to go over there without the mask and hold signs over there if that's what you want to do. You have to be you can't be within 100 feet of the polling area, which will start where I put the final end of the barriers where people will be standing and holding signs. If you want to hold signs out on Linden Street, you have to be, like I said, outside of 100 feet, and it's going to be tough because if you're across the street holding signs, 100 feet means you're in somebody's living room. So there'll be a Gill Street where you can get down there, but just to let you know, we'll have accessible voting again like we did before outside on Talbot, the Talbot Gym on Linden Street. That'll be where people can drop their ballots off if they want to. If they don't want to come in and they voted absentee, or you can use the accessible voting option. Pull up, we'll give you an absentee ballot. We all know what we did. I explained it before about how we go through that. You can do that there. If we don't receive your ballot by 5 o'clock Tuesday afternoon in the mail at the town clerk's office, it will not be accepted. You had the option, you didn't get it in time. That's the state law. There's nothing we can do about it. However, absentee ballots will be accepted by hand up until 8 o'clock. You can bring it either inside to the ballot clerks, myself, the town clerk, the supervisor of the checklist, or you can go to the accessible voting area and drop it off there. So that's how we're going to handle all of that. That's still a viable means to bring in your absentee ballot. When we do the pre-processing on Friday, when we open them up, if we find that we've had to reject some of these absentee ballots, we will do our best this weekend coming to call you, to give you the option to come back to the town clerk's office and redo your absentee ballot. Or you can show up at the voting area on Tuesday and vote in person. But that's only if we've called you and rejected your ballot. And rejection can go with a couple. We've already done some. We can't accept ballots that have 2 ballots in it with only 1 affidavit. We've already had some people put in 2 ballots in there, and they can't do that. We've had to reject them. They will be getting a call. There's nothing we can do. We follow the state guidelines to make sure that everybody's ballot has an affidavit associated with it. So if you get a call from us, it's just to say, hey, it's up to you to come on down. It's not up to us. I think that's everything we wanted to talk about. Oh, there you go. Whoever put that up, I appreciate it. Was that you, Mr. Dean? Thank you. It talks about how we go with absentee ballots. If you want to take a second and read it, feel free. Are there any questions?
So as far as voter registration goes, I just wanted to kind of wrap that up for everyone. First, to reiterate what Mr. Scafidi has shared is a massive thank you to all the volunteers that have been working tirelessly every day with our town clerk's office to help us with our absentee ballots. Without them, we would not be able to be where we're at for our election day. So boundless gratitude for everybody that has taken the time out of their lives to be with us. So thank you. With regards to voter registration, for anybody that is yet to be registered to vote, you still have time. You have all day tomorrow. Town clerk's office is open until 7 p.m. Supervisors will be meeting from 7 to 7:30. That we, by mandate, by legislation, we have to be open for 30 minutes. But we will be open as long as we have voters that are looking to register. So please be sure that you investigate what you need to bring with yourself to register to vote. If you don't have the proper documentation, don't fret. We have documentation for you to sign. So we have done our best to accept every registration that has come through our door. We do not want to have any voter walking away feeling that they did not have an opportunity to cast their ballot. So a massive also gratitude to our voting public for your patience, your kindness, and your thoughtfulness and making a plan ahead of time for those that have voted absentee. With regards to a plan, I know we've seen plenty of ads on that. That plan also includes up to you're not feeling well on election day. And, you know, it could be allergies, it could be just a common cold, but it could be COVID, and it also could be the flu. And we want to be sure that everybody has an opportunity to cast their ballot. So, listen, I'm not saying people are going to get sick, but I just think that you should have a plan in play so you're able to still cast your ballot absentee or in person. We are there. We will proudly be there. We will take everybody that's coming in. So I just wanted to kind of be clear on what that plan includes for all that are out there. We are open and available for questions. You can email us at soc@exeternh.gov. That's the supervisors of the checklist. So if you have questions, please reach out. We have done everything that we can to help our public to register. I've even drove over and met with a voter because they didn't have an ability to do so. So, you know, we're a small enough town to be able to extend those graces to you. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And as far as social media goes, I just want to say thank you for those that have been posting and asking questions. I just ask that you refrain from making speculations. Just ask the people who are actually helping run the election to actually answer your question, as opposed to someone that is not necessarily in the process. So I'm just grateful for also our select board for giving us the time. I guess just a lot of gratitude tonight, and I'm looking forward to Tuesday. It will be a long night, and we will be there come hell or high water. We'll be there. So thank you.
Thank you, Vicki.
I also wanted to stress again about the mask, no mask. Remember that if you're not going to wear a mask, you cannot go into the atrium. You are going to have to go around the building, park at the location where the front entrance of the SST is. You'll walk over to Linden Street, go up to the Talbot Gym by that door, go in. We will have a ballot clerk there to check you in, get you the proper ballot, and go and vote. You can't come in the atrium door flat out without a mask. We will have masks for you if you don't have one. You can't even be in, we don't want you even to be in line in that area without a mask. So if you want to use that area, ask for a mask, we'll get you a mask. 6 foot social distancing, again, is optimum. We will have as many signs as we possibly can get done to where you can park for the no masked area, where to enter. We'll try to make it as simple and easy as we can for you. I don't know. The one thing that's starting to bother me a little bit is I had a phone call today about we're going to have plenty of challengers who will have the paperwork from the state parties that I have to allow to be in the voting area. They can stay outside the rail, but as long as they have the paperwork that they're a challenger, I will let as many as I possibly can be there. But being only having 6 tables, I'm only going to allow 6 of each party, one at each party at the table. So if there's 10 people that show up, you're going to have to make it up, because it's my decision on where we're going to put those people. So if you're coming with thinking you're just going to stand around with other people with the social distancing without a mask, it's not going to happen. Same thing with observers. Observers have no rules, no say in anything that we do. They're there at my discretion. They can be at a certain spot. I'll only allow so many observers as well. So if you're going to just come there and hope you're just going to stand around, be aware that it's just not going to be that easy anymore the way things are going. So any other questions by anybody?
I don't see any, Paul. I want to, again, thank you and Vicky and everybody else that's volunteered. Thank you for all you've done. And we'll see you Tuesday. I'll see you Friday.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Stay safe, everybody.
Okay. Thank you both. Bye, Vicky.
Take care.
Bye, Paul. Okay. Next on our discussion items, we have Connor Berry, the chair of the Communications Committee, who was just with us, 2 or 3 meetings ago, and promised us that he was going to come back very soon, and I'm impressed with how soon. I understand you got the survey done already. We can't hear you.
My speaker, my computer. Can you hear me?
Perfectly now. Good evening.
Oh. Here I was thinking my headset was so fancy. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope to be brief this evening, but thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present here this evening again. I didn't think I'd be back here so soon, but I am pleased to report that the committee has created what we consider to be a final draft of a town communication survey. So granted, we heard all the caveats from the select board about the effectiveness of surveys. We internalized that. We discussed that as a committee. Ultimately, we decided to just lower our expectations on a response rate, but still put the survey out there thinking that it could, do no harm. So the project's been in the works a little over a year, I believe. The committee has worked on the organization and the content of the survey. And we had a few weeks ago sent it out to all of the department heads of all the town departments for their input as well. So with the assistance of Bob Glowacki, who it looks like has just shared his screen, I am pleased to present the survey in its current draft. So Bob, obviously feel free to jump in here. Bob was very instrumental in getting this off the ground. There's some preliminary questions, some basic demographic questions, trying to understand the survey takers, basic information and their relationship to the town. Then we kick it off with a very general outlook. You're satisfied, dissatisfied, or you're pleased. And then we go through each of the town departments, town-related information. So, trying to ascertain the content of the communications that people are looking for. And then what platforms do you use? We've been very interested in trying to identify what platforms people are currently using. We were thinking we could also use this survey as sort of an educational experience for people who, for instance, didn't know that there was a town Facebook group. They would know after taking the survey. We do ask people about whether they've ever attended a town public meeting. If they haven't, or if they have, why or why not? And then Bob, because the Exeter TV is just in his wheelhouse, he decided to include some questions on Exeter TV specifically. What's the content they're looking for there if they do watch it? If they do watch it, again, what platform are they using to access it? Did they know there was a town app? I certainly did it before I joined the committee. So again, using this as sort of an educational experience for people as well. There's the town alerting system, which again, people may not necessarily know about. And then what would you like to see? So identifying the platforms that people use, the types of information they do use, but then what would they like to see more of? And then what's their preferred method of communication? And leaving it open-ended again at the end, just sort of bookend it with how we opened it, and just allowing people to give whatever kind of, longer answer they want. And we'd be interested in those data points. So people shouldn't have to feel like they're limiting themselves just to the multiple choice questions. If they have more to say, then, we're certainly interested in hearing it. So that is basically the survey. I feel like maybe we rushed through it a little bit. I wanted to keep my presentation brief. And we just wanted to make sure that we got the select board's blessing on putting this out there. We'd like to advertise it as widely as we can. We'd like to put it first and foremost on the website, on the town social media accounts. Obviously, anyone from the town who's listening to this live, this will be going live. And then, so we also had the idea of trying to get this out there before the election. And we were hoping, again, with the blessing of the select board, if the survey is approved, how would we communicate this in person to people coming to the polling stations in person? And one of our committee members is, I believe she's in content marketing for her day job, and had created a few of these advertisements. I just figured we didn't have enough of a discussion to really finalize this with a vote. So I will say that not all of the committee members have seen this. There was some objections to the content of these advertisements. Just using the word suffer, was it too reminiscent of the current environment that we're in? FOMO is sort of a, it's a, I guess, a more of a colloquial term for, younger people. I'm not even sure that my generation used it, but I think it's sort of more of a hip term, the fear of missing out. It's interesting content. It's edgy. I don't know if it obviously catches the eye, I think, with the coloring of it and the actual wording of it. But I wanted to kick it out to the select board, just with the survey itself, the content of the survey. Did that look fine? Do we think we're going to get, anything from that? And then just the advertisement themselves. My initial suggestion with the advertisement was just to keep it, maybe use color to draw the eye, but keep the actual content of the advertisement pretty bland. Something to the effect of, are you getting the information you need in town? Let's talk about it. Tell us what you think. Something like that, where it's just the content of it is maybe a little more neutral, but we're open to any suggestions from the board. And again, thank you for the opportunity to show you all of the content.
Yeah. Thank you, Connor. We do have some comments or questions. Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, and then our town manager, Mr. Dean.
Thanks so much, Connor. I think the survey looks great. My only suggestion would be in the promo that you're using. I don't know if you guys have planned to have like a poster board on cardstock or something on a easel as people are maybe leaving the election, that they can scan their QR code. The only suggestion would be spin it so that it's a little more positive rather than like this depressive, like fear of missing out. It's like, don't miss out on the great news that we have going on in town. And, maybe something along those lines. Because it definitely has a vibe of dark and dreary, which is not, we were living through dark and dreary times, but perhaps a spin so it's a little more positive. But I do like the fact that you have it sort of a modern method of communication that people can scan the QR code. Will you be able to have these also in different places in town outside of just, so election spot, town hall? Are you thinking anywhere else, or?
I'm not sure if the I think I've only heard this from other committee members, that there's a billboard outside of the old Ioka Theater. I don't know if that's still available. It looks like it's no. Okay. Selectwoman Gilman shaking her head. So that we'll take. I don't know where else people would think it's useful. I don't know, Bob, you've have any suggestions? But to answer your question, Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf, yes, we're going to be trying to print them out on as sturdy of a poster board as we can get. And I do agree with your comment about, let's keep it upbeat, because we don't need any more dreariness, that's for sure.
Yeah, but otherwise, great job, and I'm glad that you guys have access for people to have the simplistic way of using their scanning to get on that.
Mr. Dean and then Selectwoman Gilman.
So a suggestion to what Lovey had just mentioned, you gentlemen can certainly use the plywood or poster board outside the town hall to put an advertisement up for the survey. There aren't a lot of events happening right now, so that's available if you want to do that. That way people will see it and be able to use it. A couple other quick points. One was just wanted to say thank you to the committee and Bob. I know Bob did a great job working alongside you guys, and certainly his time is stretched in many different directions these days, and we try to allow him to do these kinds of things because we know he's a very helpful resource for you. So just want to acknowledge Bob's efforts on the survey. And there was one other thing, and I think, the one other thing I wanted to mention too is just that I don't know if the community forum is mentioned as an option still on the survey. I know I saw it in an earlier version. I don't know if it's still there right now. I just want to say that the community forum is not an official town source of information, and it's privately run and privately owned, if you will. So basically, that's not a slight at the community forum, but I think if we put it on an official town survey, we're sort of endorsing it as a town forum. And I really, I've gone back and forth with this because I do know they have quite a few members, but I just want to be able to make sure everybody understands that that is not an official representation of the town of Exeter. So I just wanted to put that marker down so people understood that. That is a monitored, controlled environment that people delete things off of at their leisure. And we would run that differently if it was an official town page. So just wanted to make that point.
Just make a note on kind of like, I think why that was included by some of the committee members. It's more like insight for us as a town. If that's the main place people are getting information, that's maybe an issue because they're not going to official channels. They're going to unofficial channels. So I think that's still a useful thing, but we could definitely just add a little thing, the not town run or something in parentheses.
I think that would be good because there are a few others too that are out there that are Exeter Matters. There's a couple of other ones that are, again, they're unofficial and they're run privately and people delete at their leisure and they sort of craft the message around what they believe the right message is, which is fine. It's, this is America, but this isn't this isn't an official site. So.
Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman.
I wanted to follow up on Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf's question about how you're thinking about displaying or getting the QR code and whatnot. There are businesses downtown I'm sure would be happy to put that out there, but I would be strategic about where you place them so you don't saturate the whole just Water Street. I'm also thinking about Portsmouth Ave, but that's a very difficult walkability space. So I can't really recommend a space for you to put something like that. There's other parts of town where these can be used. Lincoln Street, the places that more people are circulating. Swayze Parkway, outside Swayze Parkway, we could do something. So just think about that when you're creating your boards.
Thank you. Selectman Brown, I know you work with the Communications Committee. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted this great work from the whole committee. I have been with them for several months now, and just am really impressed with the level of rigor and diligence they've put on this. So thanks, Connor.
Thank you, Selectman Brown. And I agree. I'm impressed with how quickly you turn this around, and it looks like a quality survey. Connor, thank you and the entire committee for the hard work and the dedication that you have put into the committee, but certainly put into the survey. Especially you, and I'll congratulate you and Lucy. You had found time to get married while you were working on this.
They're hard. Again, there aren't many bright spots these days, but that's mine.
Congratulations. Any other questions for Connor? With that, Mr. Dean, do we need a motion or just a agreement from the board to have them pursue this, continue with this?
Entirely up to you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to turn something into a motion to support the survey,
I think we should, since they worked so hard so quickly on this. I'd entertain a motion to approve the communication committee to put out the survey to the public.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Cowan. Selectwoman Cowan, did you say something?
I said yes.
Okay. Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
And clerk says aye. Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks again, Connor, and to the entire Communications Committee.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Next, we have Exeter Police Chief Stephen Poulin to speak to us with respect to the New Hampshire Police Accountability Report. Good evening again, Chief.
Good evening, everyone. So thank you for inviting us on. We just want to catch people up on where New Hampshire law enforcement is today. And we can talk about the Governor's Commission on Law Enforcement Accountability, Community, and Transparency, which is also known as the LEA Act. There's a lot to unpack on this committee, so I would urge people to go to the website, and that's governor.nh.gov/accountability. And there you can go through all the draft minutes, you can see the testimony, the different emails, policy and procedures, and some of the audits that they worked on. So the committee was established by an executive order on June 16th of 2020. It was specifically charged with examining law enforcement training curriculum procedures and policies throughout the United States, and more specifically, New Hampshire. Procedures related to the recording and investigation of police misconduct, the current state of relations between law enforcement and the communities they serve, and any other subject matter that the commission deemed relevant. Over the course of the 10 weeks, the commission met 26 times and heard testimony from 24 subject matter experts, including commission members and 25 members of the public. Upon concluding, the commission made 48 specific recommendations for improvements and reforms with respect to training curriculum, procedures, and policies. On October 7th, Governor Sununu signed Executive Order 2020-19 regarding the implementation of certain LEA Act recommendations. Now, of those 48 recommendations, about 19 of them involve local cities and towns. So they range anywhere from certification training requirements, such as an increase in mandatory annual in-service training hours from 8 to 24 hours, and that's by January of 2024. Historically, as we'll see, Exeter has always exceeded that 8-hour minimum. We're finding that a lot of these recommendations, Exeter Police has already been involved in implementing prior, but we're also going to use this as obviously a guideline to continue forward. With certification and ongoing training curriculum changes, they spoke to increasing scenario-based training and amending current lesson plans to include cultural dynamics. Exeter Police performed a simulation-based training several months ago. They spoke to mandating blocks of training and implicit bias, ethics, and de-escalation. They spoke to improving and enhancing the reporting and investigation of misconduct, creating a police academy policy and guidelines, which would mandate, and also a creation of a public integrity unit at the DOJ. Law enforcement community relations, community policing philosophy, and to mirror that of the IACP. They speak to a school resource officer and the importance of having specific MOUs to outline their duties and making sure that those school resource officers have the necessary training, which our school resource officer does. She's certified with the National Association of School Resource Officers and has also attended the Mirror Project. They speaks to recruitment practices, attracting, recruiting, and retaining a diverse group of candidates, and also making mandatory psychiatric exams for new hires. The Exeter Police has always mandated psychiatric exams for our new hires. It goes more into performing social media deep dives of your employees and seeking to uncover potential biases during that hiring phase, which we do and will continue to do. So does anyone have any questions to any of those?
Any questions for Chief Poulin from the board?
Chief, how does this relate to the study that was done last September? Or is it completely unrelated?
No, our study actually does hit on a lot of these points. Recruiting and retention, training is very much in line with some of these findings of the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, before you go, you weren't on the meeting last week, but I just wanted to say thank you and recognize you and the department for keeping multiple neighborhoods safe several weeks ago in your pursuit of an escaped inmate. One of the neighborhoods happened to be mine, so I had a front row seat, but the department conducted themselves in the most professional way, and I know our neighborhood felt safe throughout, so thank you very much, and we appreciate the effort.
Thank you. It truly was a group effort. New Hampshire State Police, Kensington Police, Hampton Falls Police, Rockingham County Sheriffs. We all helped and we worked great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a continued discussion from last week on the Riverwoods Tax Agreement for the woods, the ridge, and the boulders. Mr. Dean, I think we have some speakers this evening to refresh us on these agreements. I think Attorney Summers is with us this evening.
Yes, she is, as is Deb Riddell, and Justine Vogel from Riverwoods, the CEO of Riverwoods, is also with us tonight. Deb is the executive director.
Good evening to all of you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, as Rusty just said, with me tonight is Deb Riddell, who's the executive director of Riverwoods Exeter, and also Justine Vogel, who is the CEO of Riverwoods Group, which is the umbrella organization. I was with you last week listening into some of the questions in the discussion, and we appreciate the opportunity to come back and just really try to refresh the selectmen's memory as to the history of this agreement. So Justine and Deb can jump in at any time and talk about the particulars of the operations because they're best suited to do that. But I thought I would just take a moment to try to put some context on this agreement. This agreement really, it's based in two parts. One is that there was a statute that was passed in 1992 having to do with granting tax exemptions for charitable nonprofit housings and medical facilities. In addition to that, when the first Riverwoods project was done, over I think around 20 years ago at this point, there was a negotiation that occurred between my retired partner, Charlie Tucker, as well as one of the key players in the Riverwoods construction. And that negotiation occurred with the town to try to come up with a formula by which Riverwoods would pay a certain portion of the taxes that would otherwise be owed to the town, but not the full tax rate. So what happened at that time was really what is reflected in the proposed tax agreements that are in front of all of you, and which simply require that, to break it down, what happens is that the residential units pay the full tax rate. The nursing home, which is also sometimes called the skilled care facilities, don't pay anything. And then the land on which the facility operates is going to pay the full tax rate, except for 17 acres or anything basically that's in current use. The two other components to this agreement, and this has been in here historically, is that if there is a portion of the development that might support both the fully taxed rate, i.e. the residential units, and supports the nursing home piece, then there will be a pro rata distribution of the taxes for that. And then the final piece of this historically has been the fact that either party has reserved the right to question the amounts that are going to be allocated to the taxable and non-taxable, and that the value of the taxable portions can be challenged. So that, in a nutshell, really is the history of how this agreement, which is in front of you, can be presented or has been presented to the town. And just briefly, the basis of the agreement, or the concepts behind it, is the statute that I just referenced that was passed in 1992. And essentially what that statute says is that if you have housing which is done for elderly people, and it is done in a way that's going to be charitable, and that term is defined by statute, then you can actually get a full exemption for the taxes. Very briefly, the key components here of determining whether or not you might qualify for that statute are whether or not you are charitable, as defined by the statute, whether or not the organization that's going to administer it is nonprofit, which Riverwoods is, and is established and administered for a charitable purpose, whether those obligations are enforceable. And in the case of Riverwoods, they are. We have a series of covenants and we then report those to the Attorney General's office. Whether the land is going to be used for charitable purposes. And are we obligated under our organizational scheme to use the revenue that we generate for the charitable operation, meaning the elderly housing? And all of those things are true. So what happened, again, historically, was that rather than try to determine whether or not we would be exempt under this particular provision of the statute and not have to pay anything, or whether there was going to be what is sometimes referred to as a pilot entered into, this particular mechanism was created by Riverwoods and by the town, in which essentially there's an agreed upon formula for us to pay for certain portions, and other portions we don't pay. So that's really it in a nutshell. As I said, I know one of the specific questions that was raised the last time that this issue was discussed was the organizational structure of Riverwoods. And I can confirm, and obviously Justine and Deb can speak to this, but it is nonprofit. And the revenue that's generated, regardless of the current rates that are charged, goes back into the organization, and it is not something which is, distributed as a profit scheme in a traditional for-profit entity. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you want to hear probably more productively from Justine or Deb, I'll just turn it over to them.
Well, first, I'll ask the board if they have any questions, but I had a quick question, more of an opinion going forward in the future. Is this something that could be condensed into one agreement, or does it have to be three separate agreements, Attorney Summers?
I think probably for it's certainly something that we could consider. I mean, frankly, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's been done like this for so long. I guess I'd have to go back and revisit what the thinking was. My guess is that it probably has to do something with just tracking the documentation for accounting purposes and bookkeeping purposes. But there may be some way that we could create sort of a master document and then include appendixes such that it referenced the 3 specific properties.
Okay, it's just a thought for the future moving forward. Selectman Brown has a question for you, and then Selectwoman Gilman.
Sure.
I think that answered my question. It was why the boulders wasn't included in that last agreement, but I guess I think you covered that just now.
Okay.
Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, and thank you. I think in my history here, one of the reasons that this evolved in this way was because of the building of the different units or different entities. So we just added another one just like the first one. And if there's any difference in numbers of, if you have to specify acres with the Attorney General or charitable trust or anything like that, I'd certainly be happy to just sign one document if that's possible.
I think we could look into something like that. I mean, as Selectman Gilman just referenced, probably, and again, I wasn't part of this whole proceeding when this first started, but because of the fact that there are three different campuses for Riverwoods, all of which came online at different times, it's entirely possible that there was an agreement. And then a few years later, another agreement gets formed for the boulders and then the ridge and so forth, which is why you have 3 documents. But yeah, I mean, I think we can certainly look into creating sort of a master agreement, which is going to break out the basic concepts, and then we can come up with exhibits or appendixes which are going to be tailored to the specific campus, just to make life easier for people.
Thank you. Justine and Deb, do you have anything to add?
Happy to answer any questions, but yeah, I mean, historically, I think Selectman Gilman hit it right on the nose. There's 3 agreements because the the campuses were built at different times. And there's no issue for us internally. We are one company, so no issue with having one agreement. There are 3 valuations, so 3 tax cards with the town. So long as that's not an issue with the town, it's not an issue for us.
Great. Mr. Dean?
Yes, because it's rare for us to have Justine and Deb on the same call, I just wanted to say hello and ask you guys how things are going at Riverwoods. And I know it's been really tough, obviously, with the COVID-19 situation that we're dealing with. So just wanted to reach out and offer any assistance we can to you at this time. And hopefully you're staying as safe and healthy as you can. I know it hasn't been easy.
Thank you. These are trying times to be in the senior living industry, but I would think Deb would echo in saying we have a fantastic staff, we have a fantastic group of residents, and very happy to be healthy and safe right now. And the best we can do with COVID is to say right now things are great. Tomorrow may be different.
Are you having any trouble finding employees? How is that going?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting time right now. The unemployment benefits are challenging. We employ a lot of folks who are entry level employees. We have challenges with school systems being open and closed. A whole host of challenges, but I think. And quite frankly, we want to limit the number of people on our campus at all times because we have the most vulnerable population. So that is probably going to be a challenge for us until there's a vaccine, until schools are more consistently open, and we're trying to be as flexible as we can with our employees so that. People can do what they need to do with their kids, do what they need to do with their families, and still be safe and healthy when they're here.
Thank you, Justine. Thanks to both of you for coming in.
Thank you both. Selectwoman Cowan.
Hi. It's good to hear, Justine, that you are all healthy and safe. I know it has been incredibly trying. We are always worried about all of our citizens and all of our residents. And so it's good to hear that everybody's doing well. I will be a little nitpicky on one thing. When we are considering updating the language and maybe condensing all of the agreements into one agreement, we are the select board. There are select women on the board, and we have made that change. So if that could be reflected, that would be great.
Sure. Absolutely.
Any other questions for Attorney Summers or Deborah Justine? Well, thank you for coming on tonight to give a refresher, and I'll look forward to Attorney Summers maybe looking into condensing this. But for now, we will need 3 separate motions this evening, unless there are any other questions from the board. And if not, I would entertain, we could start. What was the first one?
I think it's the Woods, Mr. Chairman.
The Woods, I would accept a motion to approve the agreement on the Woods.
Mr. Chair, I move to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement as presented October 26, 2020, between the town and the Exeter Riverwoods Company at Exeter for the Woods.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I just interject for a moment? I need to ask, is this, maybe Attorney Summers can help us with this. Since the agreement calls for paying taxes, is it in fact a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, or is it another type of agreement, in your opinion?
Mr. Dean, I would recommend, just for clarity, that the motion just reference the agreement, since that is technically what is in front of you right now. I appreciate what Selectwoman Gilman is saying, but just to be consistent with the actual language, we probably should just say agreement.
Thank you.
So let me amend my motion. I move to enter into the agreement between the town of Exeter and the Riverwoods Company at Exeter as presented October 26, 2020 for the Woods.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Select Woman Cowan.
Aye.
I'm looking for everybody here. Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olive.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next, I would entertain a motion to enter into the agreement with the Ridge.
Mr. Chair, I move to enter into the agreement as presented between the town of Exeter and the Riverwoods Company at Exeter for the Ridge.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olive.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And then finally, I would entertain a motion to approve the agreement for the boulders.
Mr. Chair, I move to enter into an agreement with, as presented on October 26, 2020, between the town of Exeter and the Riverwoods Company at Exeter for the boulders.
Second.
Motion a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olive.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Attorney Summers, Justine, and Deb, thank you again for coming out tonight and giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe and well, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along, we have an update from DPW Director Jennifer Perry on the exploratory test well drilling. Good evening, Ms. Perry.
Good evening. Yes, the department has been working diligently over the last 2 years with a team of consultants, including Underwood Engineers and Emery and Garrett, on future water sources for the town. Part of the analysis was looking at our existing surface water treatment plant on Portsmouth Avenue and determining what needs to be done to carry us into the near future, and then what do we do after that. And also our new groundwater treatment plant. It would be relatively easy to develop groundwater in town. It is cheaper to treat groundwater. We already have a treatment facility. And when we built that facility, we provided enough floor space and all the other required piping for a fourth filter. Right now, we only have 3 filters. And one of the things that we've determined through this 2-year process is that there are some very feasible groundwater sources in the town of Exeter. And the team has targeted 3 different general areas as potentials for groundwater development. And those areas include Powder Mill Road area, the area between Court Street and Linden Street, near the river, near the Exeter River, and east of Drinkwater Road. And those areas are attractive primarily because of the potential for the volume of groundwater. But it's also attractive in that there are several large town-owned conservation parcels that are in those locations that make it very attractive to us for development. But what we do need to do, there are some private abutting parcels. We also need to be looking at those. There are over a dozen test well sites that have been identified by Emery and Garrett, the hydrogeologists, based on their, looking at seismics and fractures and resistivity. And that's how they will basically prioritize what wells we should be trying to develop in the future. And at this point, we're about to meet with the Conservation Commission just to gain access to those parcels for the test drilling. And we wanted to bring you up to speed because we realize you are really the ultimate decision makers. And we were planning to be meeting with the Conservation Commission. I believe it's November 10th is their next meeting. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to hear a little bit about the work that's been going on and where we're progressing. The ideal time of year for us to be doing the test drilling is in the winter, to be honest with you. There are wetland areas that we need to be able to cross without doing any damage. There's no intention to be building roads. We basically use a tracked rig that can travel very lightly and cause very minimal disturbance. So the intent of the meeting with the Conservation Commission is to just talk about access issues to those parcels and any other outstanding requirements that they may have if there are any restrictions on the use of any of those parcels. Because sometimes when those conservation easements are written, there can be some constraints.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Perry? Mr. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment. I know, as you know, years and years ago, I worked south of us before coming back to the area. And down there, I know at least it was law at one time that you could actually take conservation land out of conservation for other purposes. But my purpose for making that statement wasn't to do that. It was to say that a lot of communities south of the border have a really great synergy between public water supply and conservation land because it's naturally protected. And so it creates aquifer protection for water supply. And the other pro on that is that obviously we would not have to pay to acquire land that we already have. So that's a major potential cost savings if some of these sites that are on conservation land actually bear fruit and are good. So I just wanted to make that comment, and then maybe have Jennifer comment back to the board on the timing of the drilling, because we are in a drought, a severe drought. Does that have any material impact on the pump tests and what the yields might be given where the water table's at right now?
So yes, that can have an impact on the results, but it's going to impact them all similarly. So when we go to prioritize, if we see one well that is more, we also do water quality testing. So if we see one that is poor water quality and would require additional treatment, that's not likely one that we would recommend full development. But all of them are going to be impacted similarly, and the hydrogeologist can relate that back to normal conditions.
And maybe a quick comment to Jennifer on why these particular sites were chosen, because I know the old landfill at Powder Mill Road, how does that come into play when you're looking at that particular site?
So that site is not part of the area. It's a ways away. I know it's called Powder Mill, but it's not, there's a hydraulic divide, if you will, between that area and the area that we're looking at. So, yeah.
Thank you. Selectman Brown?
Yeah, thanks. Ms. Perry, just a question about the quality. So we know that the hydrogeologists have identified sources, but not quality. Is that correct?
They've identified potential sources, but no quality at this point. And that would be part of the test well drilling, is to do water quality testing too.
Okay, and then just sort of a general sense of groundwater versus treating existing water, the expense there for drilling, or the expense of pumping versus treating as we're doing now? Give a sense.
So yes, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Pumping groundwater is a little more expensive, but the treatment costs for groundwater are much less than surface water. And it is a bit of a balance. We have a fair amount of pumping that does go on within our surface water treatment plant. So it's not as if everything just flows gravity there. There is pumping too, but it is less expensive than groundwater. But when you factor in the chemicals and just some of the nature of groundwater, it's cheaper. And one of the things that we were taught early on in environmental engineering is you always want to develop the best possible source for water supply, because you can only anticipate future regulations getting more and more stringent and more challenging to meet. So that's really important. You know, the best quality is very, very important. And then, of course, the other half of the exploratory test drills is to determine the volume, the sustainable volume.
Great, thank you.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. My question is about when you're looking at the different sites for their viability. Do you also include in that the other factors like the length of piping that we're going to need, or do we need to get right-of-ways or easements or whatever? Because I'm thinking about the Powder Mill Road site, because I know that and I know where you're looking, and you'd have to go under the rail system, wouldn't you, or under the river?
So we're still working out the access points, but absolutely one of the things that we looked at early on was, proximity to the existing system, because it doesn't make sense to drill a well that's 5 miles away from the system. So we're trying to determine the best locations that are closest to the existing system too. Mm-hmm. But access is always something that has to be worked out as we go forward. We don't get too concerned about it at this point because it may not be a viable site.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We certainly have to get approval from the owners to do the test drilling.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Perry? So you'll be meeting with the Concom on the 10th, and perhaps we can have you back at a subsequent meeting to report back in as to how that went.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next discussion item. You'll recall that the board held a public hearing on August 24th, 2020, and a subsequent hearing the following week on August 31st, at which time the board voted to pass a mask ordinance that was effective September 2nd, 2020 for a period of 60 days. And as that 60 days will exhaust before we meet again, I put this on the agenda to have further discussion as to whether or not we want to extend the mask ordinance. And if so, for how long? So I would open it up for discussion amongst the board.
I'd have a question. Selectwoman Gilman, have you, has anything progressed on the state level on this?
Not that I believe. No. It's Chief Wilson, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're still limited 100 or more are where masks are required.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I think we also have James Murray. I'm sorry, Selectman Brown, go ahead.
Good.
Yeah, Select Chair. James and I just spoke, and if I could paraphrase it, he's having a child bedtime malfunction right now, and he'll be back on shortly. But he and I have chatted, and to quote Dr. Fauci, if we can offer a suggestion, now is not the time to take the foot off the accelerator. We're seeing significant increases in positivity in Rockingham County and Exeter. We had 9 people in Exeter last week alone test positive. I think you guys really did a great job and a bold move stepping forward with an ordinance. And if I could offer, it's now is not the time to back off that as we enter the fall and early winter.
And just to circle back, I'm sorry, Selectman Brown, did you have a further comment?
I didn't, but I guess now I do. It's
okay.
Has the mandate, has Mr. Murray experienced any citations or anyone called in? Basically just trying to figure out if it's education versus mandate. Do we have a sense of people got word or that the mandate was necessary? So.
Let me see what James has got to say. Okay, James is on. He's coming on. He can answer for himself.
Great.
Hello. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. Sorry, what was the question?
Whether we've experienced citations, whether we've had more engagement with mask education or infringement of mandates. Do we think it's the act of getting information out about masks that's changed things, or the fear of a mandate?
So far, I have not issued any fines or fees, anything like that. We have had quite a few complaint calls. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but mostly it's just been, if it's a complaint about a business, reaching out to the owners or managers of that business, giving them flyers that we've come up with for them to hang. Complaints about individuals. There really hasn't been too many on individuals, but I have spoken to a few folks and just been able to talk to them, work out a solution. And so far it's mostly just been educational. There have been no fines whatsoever.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Selectwoman Gilman.
I think Selectman Brown answered my question. But I have a question for you, Mr. Chair. Are we modifying this order or creating a new order as the governor does? So it would be 2020-02 instead. No, the rest is saying no, just modify this one.
Certainly that would be up for discussion, but I believe the governor's emergency order as a whole expires 12/31/20. Is that correct, Mr. Dean?
Yes, and I just wanted to share the screen real quick on Selectwoman Gilman's comment. Right here, the way the ordinance is crafted, it says it would immediately terminate without the necessity of further action if one of the following conditions is met. 61 days have passed following the date on which the ordinance came into effect and the ordinance was not extended or reenacted. So my interpretation of that is that this would expire on November 2nd. I think that's the date, 2nd or 3rd even. But that you have the option to extend or reenact. My desire is not to redraft this. I think a reenactment is more if you wanted to rewrite portions of it and modify it and change it. So that would be my comment on that. Just a vote to extend the current mask ordinance is really what is in play here in my thought. So.
Selectwoman Cowan.
I'll make a motion if there's no more discussion.
Is there any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, Selectwoman Cowan.
I move to extend the current mask ordinance that we have in place set to expire on December 31st, 2020.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectman Brown.
Nay.
There you are. The clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Great, thank you all. So Chief Wilking and Mr. Murray, since you're here, we can go right into the COVID-19 update.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And yeah, I was able to share a little bit of information, but I just also feel it's you need to realize that the fire department and EMS department is responding to calls for COVID-related personnel and those with flu-like symptoms. And I realize we're entering into that season at numbers we saw in April and May. So we had a bit of a lull in the summer, and those calls are picking up. We're also having employees cycle in and out of self-monitoring. We haven't quarantined. I think we had one recently quarantined, but we're also having a lot of people get tested, and they're fortunately with our cycle and 5 days off between shifts, there's time to get the results of tests, and so far, knock on wood, all have been negative, so we're still kind of dodging the bullet there, and we hope we continue to. We're wearing all the proper PPE and following the lead and hopefully setting the example, but we are seeing a lot more calls. We have ordered more PPE. Chief Pizon picked it up today. The National Guard delivered to Epping. We have more masks, more gowns, and we're just ramping up for what we are likely going to see is a busy fall and winter, unfortunately. But I think it's just a product of the season. As I mentioned, Exeter had 9 residents test positive since our last select board meeting. The numbers in Exeter are now at 85. I would just paint a picture. It is still on the low side of communities our size. Several are in the low 100s already. So I think efforts you've made and efforts that townspeople are doing are paying off. But we are still seeing a slow, steady, and unmistakable rise in cases. I think we spoke at the last meeting of the governor's quick pause, if you will, on youth hockey and hockey programs. That will come to an end around November 2 also. James can speak more than I, but I know the reopening task force has a 16-page guideline on youth hockey and hockey programs, and I know they're working toward a safe startup again of that program. But I know the last thing I'd like to say, and I don't see anybody from Parks and Rec on tonight, so just want to throw it out there for the Exeter citizens watching. Obviously, take due regard for trick-or-treating coming up. The safety of you, your families, discipline is paramount. We're going to offer the parade going around town. I know the police are going to lead the fire and Parks and Rec crews. Going to be some nice floats going around, and I hear there's a family that's willing to ride the fire truck around town and wave, and we'd be more than happy to make that happen. And we're looking forward to it around 10:30. So be on the lookout in your neighborhoods for the sirens and the horns from 10:30 to probably 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. So, he's got Greg Pups on. He can speak to that as well. But I'll turn the floor over to James in case he has anything else on the COVID update. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Selectwoman Gilman has her hand up, so I don't know if she had a question for you. So, you're muted, Selectwoman Gilman.
Of course you are.
I'm from the generation of the computer immigrant. So, I don't, instead of the computer natural, I guess, I forget the word it is, native, computer native. My question had to do with the Halloween parade, and is there a specific route that you're going to advertise?
There is, and not to be coy, I believe it's on a need-to-know basis, and right now I don't need to know. So Melissa, I think, is still working that out, and I hope that that'll go out soon on social media outlets and the website. But I've only been told to plan on about 3.5, 4 hours of driving, so I believe it'll be long. I just don't know exactly what it is.
So to that end, Selectwoman Gilman, I know there's a rec advisory committee meeting tomorrow night, and I know that the Parks and Rec, we're going to post a route at some point, and I do believe I was told that the parade will be 4 hours. So, and I just, James, before we get to you, I just want to kind of further comment to what Chief Wilkins said. For those who are going to be trick-or-treating, we ask, again, the select board had suggested you stay in your own neighborhoods, trick-or-treat with your siblings or people that you've been spending time with, socially distance, use hand sanitizer. But please, please, please also be respectful. This is voluntary. Please be respectful to those that do not have their light on. If people don't have their light on at their houses, please don't ring their bells. This is purely voluntary. We want it to be fun but safe, and we certainly want to respect those citizens that elect not to participate. Mr. Murray.
Just to piggyback off what the chief said, we do have new guidance for hockey now. It looks like that came out this past Friday. Quite a detailed piece of guidance there, so there's a lot of details to it. Looks like the state has put in a lot of work on that. So hopefully, I believe hockey is actually back October 30th, 2 weeks from the Friday that it was closed down. So we'll just have to go from there. It looks like there's a lot of good guidance there.
Any questions for Mr. Murray? Okay. Thank you both. Mr. Dean, do you have any COVID-19 updates?
So I wanted to cover a couple of things on COVID. One was to ask the chief to comment, or James, or both, whomever is in the best position to do it, on the new cases that were identified. Are they community transmission cases or are they cluster cases?
I don't have a feel for that. I know we did have a business in town that was affected and employees were affected, causing it to be closed temporarily. But I haven't been told if they were community or cluster. I will check, and I can feed you relay information back probably tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Chief. The other comment I wanted to make was just about trick or treat, and talking to people around our neighborhood. We're trying to get the word out about using a table. And if you have one, like an 8-foot table, typical table you use for a barbecue or whatever, birthday party, maybe putting it out on the front lawn and putting the candy spaced out on the table. So that way kids can come up to the table, take the candy, and not have to cluster or engage and deep dive into a bin of some kind. So just sort of best practices. And I wanted to also, I know I sent the board a copy of the latest week in review with EXTV. which they are doing a fantastic job at, by the way. And I really want to give them a lot of recognition and credit because there's quite a bit of work that goes into that each week to come up with that and the content. And our departments have been very proactive, and there's a really good trick-or-treat piece in there from Parks and Recreation. So I just encourage people to share that and view it, and it's a good piece of information every week that our group is putting out. We talked about communications earlier tonight, and I think the weekly report is a superbly understated part of our communications program. So just wanted to put in a plug for that. My final COVID update, and I don't know if I've talked a lot about it, but I know that the issues that we had in our local hockey arena really took a lot of our time 2 weeks ago. And I know I think I acknowledged James and the chief last time. I actually sent an email personally to the Attorney General about that situation because I did see a full parking lot over there with just about 100% out-of-state plates. And I can tell you that there were legitimate concerns that were raised within the community about kids that were playing in that program that were then crossing over into other sports areas. And certainly as town manager, it's a concern. As a parent, it's a concern. So that was definitely happening. And I know right now, and I think James can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but some of the players in at least one of the programs are now going to other states to play in tournaments because the state of New Hampshire does not allow them right now. So it is a little dicey, and I realize there'll be different opinions on it. But, my awareness was to at least say, look, there were at the time that this went down, that there were plenty of people coming here from out of state. I actually saw plates from as far away as Alaska and Missouri and California in the parking lot at the arena. So it was quite a surprise to see that. So people must be traveling a long way to play hockey. But I do want to acknowledge our group here. I think we treated it responsibly and in the best way we can. We do know how important sports are for kids to play. My own kids play. They don't play hockey, but they play sports, and they're playing sports right now. And it's hugely important, but it's also important to protect the community as much as we can. So I'm glad action was taken, and I'd like to think our team had a little bit to do with it. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dean, and I'll second that. I know how active you and James were on that Saturday, and I appreciate you taking that effort for our community. Any questions or comments for Mr. Murray, Chief Wilking, or Mr. Dean before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we can move into regular business. We do not have any abatements, credits, or exemptions this evening. We do have...
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
We actually do have one abatement that didn't make the packet.
Okay.
It is, and I apologize, but it's right here. Another beauty of Zoom, you can bring it right up and take a look at it. It's maybe a little hard to read, but it is for map 94, lot 19. Location is Court Street, and the amount is $1,766.75.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve this.
Yeah, Mr. Dean, can you repeat that information? Map and lot number and the amount?
Right, so
small.
It's map, sorry about that. It's map 94, lot 19. Mm-hmm. Location is Court Street, and the amount is $1,766.75.
And this has gone through the assessor's office, and they have found it adequate backup for this?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
They are recommending it.
Okay. I'll make the motion. I move to approve a tax abatement for map 94, lot 19, in the amount of $1,766.75.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan. That was an aye. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olin.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one permit this evening for a special event application for the Exeter Run Club Thanks for Giving road race to take place on November 26, 2020. Mr. Dean, is there anyone here this evening to speak to this?
Not specifically, Mr. Chairman. I gave Parks and Rec the night off.
I know Mr. Means here, but I didn't know if anybody from Parks and Rec.
No, I don't. I believe James is on the line, and I think he's reviewed this from his end. So if you have any questions about the public health part of it, he can certainly answer those. I know Parks and Rec is okay with it as it's been presented. The other thing about this is I was told it's all on private property, but I'm a little confused by that because the map looks like it's in the public right away. So maybe out of an abundance of caution, the board is being asked to approve this.
Well, fortunately, we have our applicant here with his hand up, so I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Meehan. Good evening.
Good evening.
I know you've been here from the start of the meeting. Thank you for your patience. Would you like to just give us a quick overview of the application?
Sure. We have this will be our 4th annual Thanks for Giving 5K. We've hosted up to 1,000 runners. Out of abundance of caution, we've decided to pare it down to a 200 runner event. I was very hesitant on completing the application until this point, and only after looking at some events of 500 runners. So I think we've pared it down, and we'll have an adequate flow of runners. So there'll be very little overlap. We're going to do a wave start of 25 runners at a time, starting each runner roughly 10 seconds apart. So it'll be a little bit of logistical fun for me, but I think we'll have enough volunteers to make that happen.
Okay.
After listening to tonight's proceedings, I realized we should probably limit the applications or the registrations to people within New Hampshire and maybe only in the SEU 16. So registration applications will only be sent to runners that formerly ran in the event, and I can scrub that list of out-of-state runners.
Okay. And then could you just comment real quick on the map?
I'm sorry?
Just on the map, Mr. Dean's noticing that it said private property as opposed to public?
No, it's all public property.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. And James, did you have anything to comment on?
No, from what I saw, I had no concerns.
Okay, all right. And Parks and Rec was okay with this as well?
Yes, they were, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Any questions or comments from the board for Mr. Meehan? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the special event application of the Exeter Run Club for the Thanks for Giving road race to be held on November 26, 2020, as outlined on the application.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf.
Aye.
Selectwoman Cowan.
Aye.
Selectman Brown.
Aye.
The clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Mr. Meehan. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dean, the town manager's report.
Okay, I had a couple of things just to bring the board up to date on. So our MS1, which is our report evaluation, that was fine. That was completed today as a result of some utility values being submitted back to us. So it saved us an outreach to DRA because we are getting somewhat late in the tax rate setting season. So that is complete and just needs the board's signatures. And along with that, we're continuing our pursuit of DocuSign to try to pin that down. Andy Swanson and our IT department's been working diligently on that to try to get us a reasonable deal and progress. We keep making progress, but I think our plan is likely to pilot it with a couple of different people and kind of get it going off the ground that way, and then expand it once we have a good grip on what it does and how it works. But I'm pretty bullish on it and think it's going to be a good addition to our tech basket. So just a reminder, budget-wise, that we have a meeting this week. It is on the 29th of October with the Budget Recommendations Committee. I think the Facilities Committee is meeting right before that, and I know the Budget Subcommittee for DPW is meeting tomorrow. So it's DPW General Week, and right now we did have our meeting last week with the BRC, and the police fire budgets, communications and health were discussed. It's a 0.55% increase over prior year altogether when you look at all four of those areas. So it's very lean, as we know, with the COVID situation and trying to keep spending down as much as we can. So that is the report, and the overall budget at this point through the Budget Recommendations Committee process is a 1.85% increase over the 2020 budget. And again, as I've been pointing out to people, the dollars, just at this point in time, it's a $362,579 increase over FY20, but $319,075 of that is the library bond payment that's due in 2021. So it is, as you can imagine, when you look at it, those numbers are very lean. So that's the budget update. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you and I have had continuing conversations about the Parkway and the desire by quite a few residents. I think maybe many of the board members have gotten correspondence similar that they'd like to see it closed on a more permanent basis. And that raises two issues. One is with the Swayze Trust itself and the fact that it calls for a parkway for pleasure vehicles. And another issue with that is since it is an official public way, we would have to go to a town meeting and have it declared a municipal trail if we wanted to essentially discontinue the broader use of the road. So we have two different issues that we need to deal with on that front before we can really consider closing it on a permanent basis. And I was planning on, with the board's blessing, reaching out to Tom Donovan at Charitable Trust, who helped us last year on some of the issues with the trustees, and get a feel from Mr. Donovan what his take would be if the town, in fact, wanted to go that route, whether Charitable Trust might be able to support that or not, or what are the issues. So just thinking about that and seeing what might be next. The other thing is that there's the board knows that there's a memorandum of agreement with the trustees that dates back. I think it's, I always get it confused. It's 79 or 97. And we've been looking at that MOA lately, and I'm not sure, we really don't understand the history of it, but the authorities that it seemed to confer on the trustees are really authorities that were given them by the select board at that time, and not by the town at large. The town at large voted articles in the 1930s, but they did not state in any specificity that we can find that the trustees are responsible for really, I don't want to say anything because I'm not trying to denigrate the trustees at all. I know that there are three of them and they do certain things on the parkway and et cetera, but it is hard to locate actual authority that they've been granted. So I know it's a long time historical committee that's been around a long time, but it's worth another deep dive into it, I think, because I just can't report back to you that we can find anything concrete with respect to what they are really supposed to do other than that MOA that the board signed off on with them several years ago. So I just wanted to report on that. And then I did have, I think some of you, I sent it to the board, just the commentary on the virtual meetings. I just wanted to let you know that I've sent that around to many of you, and also engaged NHMA on that issue and some other people about just the benefits of being able to use this technology and some of the potential benefits it has for the long term. And then the last thing I had was, I did reach out to Superintendent Ryan today, and I know the schools are going through a major survey right now about what parents want to do going forward with remote learning or in-person learning. And I just wanted to let you know that I reestablished that contact. And obviously there are a lot of issues with this, and the thoughts that are on my mind are, no matter what version of learning is ultimately decided, it's probably a good idea for us to continue our efforts to work with the SAU to connect the dots on underserved populations. So people that may not have technology or have needs for technology, if they have, if there are mental health issues that are involved, food issues that are involved, if there's anything that kids aren't getting that they need, I really want us to know about it from SAU 16 so we can try to help on the town side to help fill those gaps. So that is an outreach I made today, and hopefully we can have some conversations around that. I know there are a lot of great people that are thinking just like I am, trying to help this situation, and there are people more fortunate and are in better situations for remote learning than others, and just want to keep that going. So.
Thank you for reestablishing that contact, Mr. Dean, because that's very important. Keep us posted, please.
Will do.
Any questions for Mr. Dean? Okay, seeing none, we can go to our select board committee reports. Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf.
No reports from the housing committee, but there's a walkthrough on Wednesday with the Swayze Parkway trustees at 3 p.m. for anyone who can attend. I cannot.
Okay, thank you. Selectman Brown?
I have no new reports.
Great. Selectwoman Cowan?
Yes, we had a lively planning board meeting that did end in time for all of us to watch the debate. I'm trying to remember what we did. Oh, we approved the application for the new turning the barn into a dormitory at PA, and then we had some Grisette application stuff to deal with, and nothing changed with that vote.
Okay, great. Thank you. Selectwoman Gilman?
Yes, I cough now. All I've had was the Heritage Commission meeting, and I'm advertising here. I don't know where else it's been. Well, I know where else it's been. We're doing a presentation October 28th, which is Wednesday at 6:30, and it's about a heritage district that is based on the historic survey that we did around the Park Street area. A heritage district is different from a historic district, and this presentation is to see how much interest there is in it. I don't think that, my personal opinion is that the town doesn't want to accept the responsibility of yet another historic district. We've heard that a few times, but a heritage district doesn't involve, actually it does involve a town vote, but it doesn't involve a legislative body like the Historic District Commission. And it lets the community gather together to make decisions or assist in development of their surroundings more directly than they might have when somebody just comes in to build something. They'd have another voice to be heard in there. So that's Wednesday, the 28th at 6:30. We sent postcards out to all the property owners in the survey area, and are getting a bit of interest. So it'll be nice to hear the discussion. And then the other thing is, you've heard what I'm going to be doing on the Concom on Tuesday, talking about wells. And that is it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Selectwoman Gilman. The only meeting I had is I sat in on the BRC Police and Fire subcommittee report, which I have to say, after being on the committee for 3 years and chairing it for 2, that was the fastest meeting ever, Mr. Dean. So I don't know if it was because of Zoom or you shared the screen well, or could be
I'm a believer. I'm a believer, Mr. Chairman.
You also have your hand up.
I do. There were a few things I realized I missed, and I apologize. One was there's a public meeting for West Side Drive, that project that was voted on by the voters. The meeting is a virtual meeting, and it's tomorrow night. So I just wanted to put a marker down on that one, because I believe it's our first sort of neighborhood public virtual meeting. So it ought to be interesting to get a Zoom invite. You can access the meeting the way we normally would, but I believe there may be some registration involved. So I just wanted to let you know, and I can clarify for you tomorrow exactly how they're handling that, but I know anyone who wants to go can, but I also think it presents a new opportunity for us to sort of do, like, I guess you'd call it a mini abutter notice, and invite the neighborhood to a virtual meeting. So it ought to be really interesting to see how that goes, because our neighborhood meetings usually aren't all that well attended, I would say, when we do them live, because they're typically at night in downtown and all of that. But virtual, maybe it creates a new opportunity for people to Zoom in from home and in the neighborhood and participate. So we'll see what we get. That was one thing. Second thing was the town received notice today that we did prevail in the Rose Farm case from the Supreme Court. So that order is out there affirming the planning board's actions on that. So I just wanted to report that to the board so you're aware of it if you weren't already. And then the last thing was the Newtown masks that we have. I just wanted to model one real quick here. We ordered these, Pam ordered them, and they are available to the board members, and we plan on distributing them out to board and committee members as well. And there is a model of this. I'm not wearing it right now because we actually got 2 sets of these made, but there's also a model that was made by our moderator's wife, Elaine Scafidi made this model. So if you see people around wearing these masks, these are Elaine's, and thank you very much, Elaine, for making these for us. They're really great and they work well. So just wanted to let you know that there is an official Town of Exeter mask now. We hope it will be popular.
Great, thank you. Selectwoman Rontriola, if I know you had your hand up earlier. Or at least I thought I saw it.
Yeah, you did. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, moving into correspondence, we had an interesting article talking about the migration from people across the border into New Hampshire, seeing an increase now in the median rent and home prices. We also had feedback for the waste removal on October 17th. Looks like, Mr. Dean, that was successful for the most part. Some delays during certain parts of the day, but for the most part, it was well attended and successful.
Yeah, I mean, given the situation we're in, I think I would qualify it as a success. The rain certainly put a damper on activities, for the day, and obviously the COVID situation, trying to manage that as well. But I think there were some good takeaways from it. One being the online registration. I think that's actually in a reasonable regular year, which we hope will come sooner rather than later. But it's a good tool to be able to use to get a flavor for how many people will be there at the event. So there were delays, yes, but overall, I think considering the circumstances, the volunteers and RPC did a great job pulling this together for us, and our Public Works Department, who was very active in advocating for this.
And I don't want to prolong the discussion, but I'm just curious, for the significant amount of waste that was collected, in contrast to the fees and somewhat and so forth, what will the cost be to the town, if any?
We'll have to get back with you on that. I'm not really sure until we add it all up and do the apportionment, what that looks like.
Okay. And we also had a memo from Matt Berube on some upgrades and changes. I don't know if you or Director Perry wanted to comment quickly on that.
Jennifer's with us. I'll hand that one to her.
Well, thank you. We've also been working very hard to wrap up the wastewater treatment facility project. There are only a few minor things left to do. And we do have a fair budget balance that is left. And we wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else that needed to be addressed. And there are 2 kind of separate things that are we do believe should be addressed. One is that we do have several power failures a year at our site on Newfields Road. And initially, we had designed what they call a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, that protects the equipment, especially some of the high energy equipment like the UV disinfection unit. But we took that out through value engineering because it does have a cost. But at that time, we didn't realize how many power outages we were sustaining, and that continues to be the case. And it's really important that we always have disinfection whenever the plant is operating. And what happens when we lose power, it takes a few minutes for the generator to start up. And so what we need is to fill that gap of time with a UPS so that we always are disinfecting when the plant is operating. And it will be more protective of that UV equipment, because every time it shuts down that quickly, it's not good for the equipment. So that's why we need to do that. That's approximately $200,000 to add that UPS and extend the building to protect that piece of equipment. And the second, that would come out of the balance remaining for the wastewater treatment facility project. Then we also are going to be coating two of the older tanks that were original to our old wastewater treatment facility, but were reused and repurposed. They need to be coated for structural integrity. I mean, we basically have a new facility that will last 50 years. And we have a couple of older tanks that are not of that vintage. And it makes sense to give them the structural integrity that they need. And also by putting on these coatings, it will prevent bacterial growth on the surfaces. And then that growth over time, it can slough off, and it does create a problem again for disinfection. So that is approximately $80,000. And we we know that can come out of our budget, 2020 budget. We've had some spending on some other areas in the budget, so that wouldn't have to be added to the wastewater treatment facility project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Terry? Okay, thanks, Jen. We had a correspondence on Swayze Parkway road closure. We spoke about that earlier in the meeting. A memo from Assistant Chief Pison. Chief Wilking, if you're still there, did you want to comment to this?
I certainly can. I know it's getting late, but we want to do, we shot the memo to Russ and wanted to make you aware during the interim between Chief Como and myself, we did a kind of a deep dive into the fire alarm system and where we are in the town of Exeter. And during that period of investigation, we have determined, or it's been determined for us, that our current fire alarm system does not meet the standard as it has been adopted way back in 2015. The service we're providing to our customers is not what they deserve, and our fire alarm system is an all or nothing kind of system, and I'll explain that by when we receive an alarm of fire, we respond lights and sirens because we believe that's what the alarm is. When in essence it could be a trouble, it could be a ground fault, it could be a number of reasons the system has gone into alarm, but our fire alarm system does not have the ability to differentiate that. New systems, radio type systems can, and for us to upgrade to that, you see in about the third paragraph, we solicited bids, unofficial bids from 3 companies and received one back for about $90,000. And they were very apprehensive about even submitting the bid because the fire department does not have an adequate facility to house the equipment necessary to decode the box. 2 bidders refused to bid because the room we have in the fire station is not atmospherically controlled, air conditioned, and it's right off the apparatus bay, if you will, and that's the only space we have. Further, I asked Chief Pison to do a deep dive in in kind of revenue and expenses. And we've kind of watched the last 3 years, our revenue decrease while our expenses increase. And that is not a great business model to be into. And we felt the taxpayers should not be subsidizing a fire alarm system where the businesses in town weren't paying their share. We are currently billing or invoicing businesses on our fire alarm system $300 a year. Most monitoring companies average either through a dialer or their system about $1 a day or $365 a year. So our analysis was really quick. We honestly feel that it's in the best interest of the town as well as the fire department to kind of look at how we can offer the best possible service to the taxpayers for the least amount of tax dollars. And one of the things we feel it best to do today, and it's done with a heavy heart, is to step back from monitoring fire alarms and let the private sector manage that and reallocate dollars to letting us meet our core mission of emergency response and EMS and training. We feel, and we have gone through the budget process. I think it was mentioned earlier, the Budget Recommendations Committee has met with us. They have forwarded a budget that you will see as the select board. We are prepared to offer initial savings next year if we do begin the phase out of the system, and further reductions to our budget in 22 when we're completely out of the fire alarm monitoring business. So, with all that being said, the real impetus for this was we want to get in front of this and let our businesses have as much notice as humanly possible. We'd like to send letters to our customers right now and over the next year. We've targeted July 1 as a phase-out date. We could modify that so we right into the fall if we truly want a year to do it. But most can transition within 6 to 9 months. As well as getting some social media out there. We've had some problem boxes, street boxes you might see on the utility poles that we've had our personnel out fixing and removing some. And it's having the public kind of go, what are you doing? Why are you here? Why are you taking my box away? And we want to get some social media out there and let people know what we're doing with the system as we begin to kind of evaluate where we are. So we felt it necessary to bring up speed. Nobody likes to be blindsided. Nobody likes to, have something going on without notice. And this was our attempt and our Chief Paisan's attempt to kind of bring you up to speed and kind of our recommendation of where we go from here.
Selectwoman Gilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for filling us in on that. I just wanted to comment on the removal of the boxes from the streets because I'm going to give away my age and remember fondly when the horns used to whistle with a code for what box was being activated. So. And we had a town calendar that had that list of codes. And so you could look at the code and say, oh, that's over on JD Hill. I hope it's no one I know or go see. So anyway, it's old fashioned and I understand we have to update it and having to deal with the income, the revenue and the expense side of the job is not a fun one. So changing the method updating the method is good.
When the chief brought this to me, I really wanted to applaud his efforts. Because, as you know, Chief Wilking is fairly new in the position as the top person in charge, and I think this is a good reflection on him and Assistant Chief Paisan bringing this kind of, I won't go so far as to say innovation, but this change is a good change. It's a healthy change, and he initiated it and deserves the credit for it.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Wilking? Chief, thank you to you, both you and Assistant Chief Paisan.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I look forward to presenting to you at the board meeting for our budget and any other continuing questions or stuff we can chat about there as well. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Chief. Last piece of correspondence was from Primex, Property and Casualty and Workers' Comp insurer for the town, from the risk management team, discussing some updated safety requirements. And Mr. Dean, it prompts me to ask the question, do we still have a functioning or practicing safety committee?
We actually do, Mr. Chairman. I can check on the last time they met, but we do have a committee.
Okay. I sat in on a meeting, I think the right after I was elected, but this is one area of expertise professionally. So anything I could do to help the town enhance their safety committee, I'd be happy to do that. So maybe we can link in after.
Thank you.
Okay, looking at the board calendar, again, we've got the election next Tuesday. Our next board meeting is November 9th and followed by November 23rd. And we can set up, maybe on the 9th, we can set up the calendar for the remainder of the 2020 year. Hard to believe that's almost over. Before we adjourn, any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion a second. Any further discussion? I say smiling, seeing none. Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf. Aye. Selectwoman Cowan. Aye. Selectman Brown.
Aye.
Clerk says aye. Mr. Chair?
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you and good night, everybody.